All right, good evening, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to this panel discussion coming to you live from, well, the USA, from Malawi, and also from here in England, Scarborough and Hillingdon in West London. This is the third and final event in this latest series of What the World Needs events, hosted by ACS International Schools and focusing on the thinking and actions and plans that are going on right now into building a sustainable future. And this evening, we're going to delve into what is being done worldwide to improve our consumption habits. We'll be learning a little bit about the circular economy. And importantly for us all, we'll be exploring some small, everyday actions that can help us to become more environmentally responsible. We're going to hear from three speakers who I'll introduce you to in a moment. And we'll take questions from you, our audience, after that. Now, as you may know, in Zoom, you generally have a choice between writing things in the chat or posing your questions in the Q&A box. And I think that you as audience members only have access to the Q&A box at the moment. So please use that function. You can do that throughout the event. You can drop in comments, you can drop in questions as well. So I think without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the first of our speakers, to Dianna Cohen. Dianna is an artist as well as being the co-founder and CEO of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, a global alliance of more than 750 organizations working towards a world free of toxic plastic pollution. Dianna, we're so pleased that you can join us. I'm going to pass right over to you now.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Martin. It's a pleasure to be here. It's really nice to meet everybody virtually. And I am talking to you from Los Angeles, California at the moment. This is where I was born and grew up. And I wanted to just share a little bit of my background story with you and then get into why I'm so passionate about the work that I do and the work that we do. And I prepared a little slideshow just to share because I'm a visual artist. That's where I come from. And I thought it would be good to share visuals with you. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'm going to share my screen, which I believe I am. And let's see. There we go. So hi, everybody. My name is Dianna Cohen, and I'll move through these if it allows me to. Let's see, here we go. So as I was saying, I grew up in Southern California and I studied biology and art at UCLA. It's the University of Southern California here in Los Angeles. That was about 30 years ago, so it wasn't really possible to dual major in science and art, although that is really my sweet spot, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But this is an image from a conference that I attended that was focused on the cross straits between Taiwan. It was held in Taiwan, and it was looking at the impact of plastic pollution in the cross strait sea between China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan, and Taiwan, and Hong Kong. And it had participants from all those different countries. And there were beach cleanups going on while we were there. But one of the things that was really interesting to me about beach cleanups of the last 4 to 5 years that I've been privy to or engaged in is that we've been looking at brand identification and product identification when we find bits of plastic on the beach. Obviously, I'm an artist again, so I really like shapes and particularly things that are natural shapes from the environment. So these pieces that I found were particularly appealing to me, and I collected some of them and brought them back. This is some relatively new work that I've been making where I've been combining plastic bags and found seashells, but specifically seashells that had probably the sea life that had lived inside of them had been attacked by something else that had burrowed a hole through the shell. So I was looking specifically for shells that already had a hole in them. And sorry, this is a little bit out of order because this is really new work, and I'm going to take us back to older work that I've made. Originally, I was making collage pieces out of brown paper bags that I was cutting up and sewing back together. I started adding, gluing them together and then sewing them. And I started adding thread as a kind of drawing element to the pieces that I was making. And this is a mural that is 10 feet long by 8 feet high, I believe. And it's called Ocean of Plastic. And it's a piece that was a collaboration. I made it with 200 K through 5th graders at the Benjamin Franklin International School in Barcelona back in 2010. It's called Ocean of Plastic. I had the opportunity to work with the kids. We checked out every book from their library that had anything about the ocean and sea life. We talked a lot about what was going on in the ocean. We talked about the impact and what we were seeing of plastic in the ocean. And all the students were encouraged to help their parents clean out drawers and cabinets that were full of plastic bags at home. So they brought those in, we cut them up, we sewed them back together. The kids made all these different sea creatures and sea life. And I worked with a bunch of the teachers and volunteer parents. It took us a month to sew this piece together. And we then showed it for World Ocean Day, which I actually believe, is that today or tomorrow? It's tomorrow. So back in 2010, June 8th, we showed it at the Museum of Water in Barcelona, and it has since traveled to the Our Oceans Conference at the State Department in Washington, D.C., and it's traveled to Greece and to a variety of other countries to represent, it's called Ocean of Plastic. So really to talk about and get people engaged in looking at what's happening with plastic in the ocean. This is a piece that I made that's just called Recycleman. It was, I started doing this work really because I found the material to be fascinating, and I wasn't looking at it as an activist. I've now been working with plastic bags for 30 years. So I wasn't looking at the material from an activist perspective at the time. I was just thinking, this is a really fascinating material. I don't even think I originally was aware that plastic and 99% of plastics are made out of fossil fuels and byproducts of processing oil and fracked and cracked gas. So that is what plastic is made out of. I remember going to those supermarkets in the late 70s, early 80s, when we were suddenly offered paper or plastic for bags at the market. And the concept behind that and the way it was marketed to the public was that if you chose the plastic bag, you were saving a tree. So I'm just going to say that to everybody and let that sink in. I'm going to talk about some other things related to that a little bit later. These are some other large scale pieces I made. The one that's mainly pink is called falda. La falda means skirt in Spanish. And I was really thinking about some flamenco dance that I had seen with a type of long skirt that was weighted at the end. It's a kind of a bridal skirt and a particular traditional form of dance. And that piece has a lot of references to the home and to utilizing the word home in different languages that I found. These are all just found bags that were either used by me originally or used by other people that I know who started then collecting them and sending them to me. And the piece on the right is, I think it's about 15 feet high, and it's called Funnel. And I made it out of 400 plastic bags all sewed together, but it ended up getting extended and becoming even longer, but you could walk inside of it and look up through it. And 400 to 700 bags is the statistic for the average amount of plastic bags that a person in the United States uses per year. These are some other pieces that I've made. It's funny because there's an art critic here in Los Angeles, David Pakel, who described my work as misshapen rainbows. Obviously, I'm very attracted to the colors that bags come in, but I'm also attracted to the shapes and forms of deconstructing them, the text and the images that are printed on them, and reconfiguring that so I can make them say things that I'm thinking about that I want to talk about. The piece on the left, my left, is called Happy Fabulous, but hidden behind those words are the words retail therapy. And I feel like that's what we really do in marketing, is we target the public and sell them things because we give people this feeling that if we just have this thing, it's going to make us feel better. And I feel like plastic is, very attractive and appealing in that way because it comes in every color. The piece on the right is a piece called Post-Consumer Mandala. I started working on that piece after I had the opportunity to go to a very big meeting in a stadium, obviously way pre-COVID, and listen to the Dalai Lama speak. And again, I started thinking about how we're marketing and the way that products are sold to us and the way that flashy colors and advertising work function almost like a religion. It's almost like it, and not to be insulting to religions, but just it's got this kind of quality to it that as if that is the thing that we honor at the highest level, which I personally try not to, but I think it's very difficult to escape with the amount of the millions and millions of dollars that are spent advertising things to us. This piece is called Wavelens. It was meant to be my flag, and my original idea when I started learning about the fact that there was a lot of plastic out in the Pacific Ocean in what's come to be known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch or the Northeastern Pacific Gyre. This was going to be the flag for my ship. And I had this idea originally to go out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, go out to the Gyre. I thought it was floating on the surface. I was completely, misinformed on so many levels, but my imagination, of course, ran away with me. And I thought it was an island I could travel to. I thought I could go out there with a cargo ship and some decommissioned fishing trawlers and a chipping machine and a crane and a cold molding machine. And I wanted to harvest all this plastic that I thought was just sitting there waiting for me on top of the water and chip it up and cold mold it and turn it into bricks or a building material. So I had this whole idea. I worked with friends who were educated differently than me, had been to business school programs, and created a business plan to go out and do that. And at the 11th hour, I realized that my plan was not a good one, that I didn't want to focus on cleanup. I wanted to back up and look at the bigger picture and focus on prevention. So how do we prevent this stuff from getting out into the environment and the ocean in the first place? And so that's when I kind of went back to the drawing table and met with other folks who were looking at the issue and co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition together. This piece on the left is actually Post-Consumer Mandala, but displayed in a different way. I included just some other pieces so you could see things that I'm thinking about, ways that I was deconstructing the bags. And then these are slightly newer pieces, really interspersing the found plastic and the plastic bags with natural materials in the natural world. So these would lead into the first image that I showed, which involves the seashells and the plastic. The piece on the right with the skulls, the cow skulls, is a collaboration I made with another artist named Álvaro Soler Arpa, who is based in Catalonia, in Girona, and he makes imaginary, life-size, imaginary, invented kind of dinosaurs that are moving and running with structures, and then fills their chest cavity, the abdomen, and the rib cage with plastic pollution. And I think his work is very effective in communicating that the plastic all around us and the plastic pollution that is caused by these packaging materials is also in us. These are some other pieces that I made, works on paper. This is a retrospective that I presented, of course, 2 days before COVID lockdown took place here in Los Angeles. And it's on the wall of my studio. It is work and pieces I've made from 1988 until now. And so it's kind of the trajectory of working with wood and brown paper and then moving into working with plastics. And I would say after all of this work that I've been doing, that I absolutely have a love-hate relationship with this material. I understand the value of it to the contemporary world and contemporary life, but I also have come to have a greater understanding, and I'm learning every day about how it impacts human health, animal health, the water that we drink, both tap water and the top 25 brands of bottled water, how we're now finding plastics and microplastics, microfibers and nanoplastics in human blood, in lung tissue, in placenta, both on the mother's side and the baby's side, and just a deeper understanding of the entire chain of our use of plastic and how that impacts human health. So to that, I will end my the images that I'm sharing and just continue by letting you guys know that, you know, we created Plastic Pollution Coalition, and Plastic Pollution Coalition is a global coalition working for a more just, equitable world free of plastic pollution. And the work that we do is to educate, connect, and advocate around plastic pollution and help people better understand by creating guides and short format video pieces and collaborating with coalition members to educate and to push for and help uplift existing solutions. And those solutions oftentimes are material solutions, but other times they are system solutions, and they can be as open as infrastructure solutions. So really thinking about reusing materials, thinking about selecting materials to package products in the first place that are biobenign and non-toxic. And even though they may need more energy to produce them in the first place, if they're stainless steel, food grade stainless steel, glass, wood, bamboo, made from seaweed, made from mushrooms, made from mushroom mycelium. There are so many wonderful materials all around us that many of which have been used for thousands of years by different cultures. And we are surrounded by these, and we don't need to be using plastic and single-use plastic to package the majority of our food, our beverages, our beauty products, our health products, or to make products out of. And so it's been a really amazing ride and incredible trajectory. Our organization is now made up of more than 1,200 other organizations and businesses from 75 countries around the world. And one of our first campaigns was to encourage people to refuse single-use plastic. And I know that that's a tough thing to say. And I would say I've come a long way. We've learned a lot. And it is quite possible that there are many places and many cities and towns where simply refusing plastic is not an option. And so I just want to acknowledge that, but also at the same time say that I've come to learn that plastic is truly polluting us the way that we use it. And again, while a remarkable material, it is made with plasticizing chemicals, whatever the carbon source is for the plastic, because obviously we can make plastics out of other carbon sources besides fossil fuels. Although again, the majority of plastics are made from fossil fuels. But even oftentimes when we make it out of these other materials, which can be bagasse, corn husk, potatoes, various other hemp, other materials, when we add these plasticizing chemicals, they come in various groups. And you may have heard of bisphenols or BPA. Oh, this is fine because it's BPA free, but it turns out that the substitutes for BPA are equally bad, if not worse, to BPA. And then there's a whole group of chemicals called phthalates. The phthalates are added to make the plastic soft and mushy and kind of malleable, like a rubber ducky. And then the bisphenols are added to make it transparent, translucent, and rigid, and to form it and shape it. And we now understand that these different chemicals have also been identified as endocrine disruptors. So they turn things on and off in our body when we don't want to do that. And these chemicals, BPA has probably been studied the most, but BPA and other bisphenols have been linked to all different kinds of health issues, including diabetes and obesity, to breast cancer, brain cancer, and prostate cancer, and to lower sexual function and sterility and infertility. And phthalates have been identified and renamed at UC Irvine as obesogens. So they make our bodies hold more weight or hold more fat. That said, I really want to turn to solutions with all of you, because I feel like You are the generation that is going to take on this problem and hopefully solve it. And I think that the solutions lie in, I'm going to call it creative thinking. I'm very proud to be an artist and feel like I can learn the rules, I can learn the parameters to something, but I can also break those rules and go outside the box in my thinking. And I feel like that is really where these solutions are going to come from. I'll give you a quick example of one of our new projects is called Flip the Script on Plastics in Film and Television. And we're working with the entertainment industry and content creators, both here in Hollywood and in the United States, in Canada, but also in India, in Bollywood, in France, with the film industry there, to look at how to tell real stories about plastics and single-use plastic, to help people better understand that when you look at the whole chain of our use of this material from, extraction and production through manufacturing, if it's designed for single use, this short amount of time that we're using it, and then instantly it's a waste management issue, oftentimes dumped in our environment, or euphemistically called landfilled, or burnt. And again, euphemistically called waste to energy or waste to fuel, or these various different phrases that are used. And when we look at that entire chain, we also understand that it more greatly affects low-income communities, rural communities, indigenous communities, communities of color, Black communities, brown communities. And all of these facilities tend to be located in these low-income communities and really adversely affect people with great health problems. So it's important and tantamount that we solve it. But we need to solve it also because when we're eating and drinking all of our food out of it, we are hurting ourselves and future generations. And so again, back to solutions. As artists, as designers, as creators, we can imagine a world free of plastic pollution. And what I like to do and what I'd like to propose to everyone here as just an exercise, and I'm looking forward to the conversation after my colleagues' presentations, I really encourage you to imagine what a world without all of this plastic would look like, and then work backwards from that and think about the niches that need to be filled, because in a sense, it's the wild, wild west. We're only limited by our own imagination. There's room to design infrastructure that supports reuse and refill and bulk shopping. And I'm seeing more and more refill shops open up, not just here where I live in Southern California, but around the world. And also looking to the zero waste movement and looking to composting and all these different ways of separating materials, and rather than even using the terminology waste, looking at everything as a reusable, regenerative, valuable resource. And I feel like if we design from that perspective, we will not create waste anymore. If we look at everything as a valuable resource, we will solve that problem. And one last thought is that, nature doesn't create any waste, but the planet has had a lot longer than our existence to develop, bacteria and all these different things that eat and use and utilize everything. And I don't think that we have that kind of time. We're too busy extracting every last thing that we can use and eating it and burning it and contributing to climate change and releasing greenhouse gases and dioxins and particulate pollution. And we really need to pause for a moment and rethink how we are looking at all of these materials that we're using. So I'll leave you with that thought and also invite you all to learn more and utilize all of the free resources and guides that are on our website at plasticpollutioncoalition.org. Thank you.
Dianna, thank you so much for that. What a fascinating way to start our evening together. I love the interplay of science and art in your beautiful but thought-provoking work, and I suppose also just the creativity and the positivity and optimism of your solutions. Using discarded and found objects, turning these the products of fossil fuels into these lovely misshapen rainbows that you, that your critic described. Lovely, but also disturbing, I think, as we consider the impact of these materials on our world and on our own bodies in the way that you described. I can really see that love-hate relationship and how that comes about. And I also felt that point that you made there about the damage caused so often affecting those who are most vulnerable in one way or the other. I wonder if this is going to be a theme that we're going to hear again in the course of the evening with our other speakers. So thank you so much for that. I don't want to hold the floor for any longer. I'm going to introduce now our second speaker, Adam Smith. Adam is a chef and the founder of the Real Junk Food Project and CEO of Surplus to Purpose, which works to reduce food waste. Adam, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Hi, everybody. So yeah, my name's Adam Smith and I'm currently the CEO of an organisation called Surplus to Purpose. And to give you kind of some insight into how I came into the world of food waste, I need to give you a kind of understanding of my journey and my personal story as well. So I grew up in Leeds, in West Yorkshire. I had a very dysfunctional family. I ended up in care. I ended up in prison. I ended up addicted to substances and became homeless. And around 10 years ago, I made a serious attempt at ending my life, to the point where when the police found me, they actually said that I was dead at the scene. It took me about 3 days to come round. And after that, my friend who was beside my bed turned around to me and said, "You're not very good at this, you might as well stop doing it." And he was right. You know, I'd been on this really self-destructive path since the age of around 10. And, you know, I was around 25 when this happened. And I decided to do what I knew best, which was to run away from my problems. So I couldn't get any further away from Leeds than Australia. So I landed in Australia in 2012. And I decided that I was a chef at the time. I'd been a chef for around 5 years before I landed in Australia. And I said I was going to get out of the catering industry. It was a very, very toxic lifestyle. And I was involved with a lot of people that were very similar to me. And I needed to get away from that. And so I ended up in Australia, and the first job I got was a chef. Obviously, I was very, very good at it. I got paid a lot of money to be a chef in Australia. And I ended up getting offered citizenship. And in order for me to do that, I had to go work on farms in Australia. And I went and worked on a farm about 3 hours north of Melbourne, where I was a head chef at the time as well. I was offered citizenship in a restaurant in Melbourne. And I was the head chef of an Italian restaurant. I'd been taught Italian food for most of my professional career. And I decided that I'd take them up on the offer. So to do this, I had to spend 3 months working on farms. And when I got to this farm, I was harvesting almonds. So I was basically just bashing a tree with a stick, catching it in a net for 3 months. And it was the most boring work in a desert, red hot. And there was nothing else around us whatsoever. I mean, you'd have to drive an hour to the local supermarket. But on this farm, there was around 6 pigs. And these pigs were getting delivered this amazing produce every single day. And I started eating the same food as the pigs. And then I questioned the farmer. I was like, why is it that these pigs are getting fed this food that is perfectly edible and fine to eat and is better than some of the foods that I can purchase in the supermarkets? And the farmer turned around to me and said that this was food that had been wasted by neighbouring farms, and supermarkets had literally cancelled contracts, some of them even the night before. And this harvest had to either be ploughed into the land or it had to be harvested and wasted. Now, I went down the kind of orthodox route of replying, then why don't you just feed it to homeless people or poor people? And the farmer turned around to me and said, well, it's not my job to do that. I'm a farmer. And it made me realise that we had a serious problem with food waste and food poverty, not just in Australia, but obviously all across the world. And I realised that what he was referring to is that food waste is more of an environmental issue rather than a social issue. And the two need to be completely separate. So I walked away from this farm and decided that I was going to do something about it. 22nd of February 2013, I was leaving his farm, and I said, I'm going to create the Real Junk Food Project. I'm going to feed the world. And I've no idea where it came from. I just knew that I was going to try and use my skills and my knowledge to do something with this food and to show people that this perfectly edible food that was going to waste was completely unnecessary. And there was lots and lots of factors involved. But this food was fit for anybody to eat, not just poor people or needy people or homeless people. And obviously I'd been in those situations as well, prior in my life. And I'd seen how people give you handouts of food, or at the end of the day, a supermarket that were throwing food away would hand it out to the local homeless people. I'd been part of that kind of culture as well. But I felt like we wasn't actually solving either problem. We wasn't solving the issue of food waste, and we certainly wasn't solving the issue of poverty. So I came back to the UK, December 2013. I'd sent out around 5,000 emails prior to me arriving. I think I got 2 replies. One of them was from a friend of mine now, who is a lawyer, a man called Duncan. And, I said I wanted to create this project. I'd done some research in Australia. I spent a couple of months just traveling around and trying to understand this kind of concept of circular economy and climate change and what was actually going on in terms of production and logistics, supply chains, and obviously working in hospitality, I had a lot of access to food. And I decided to go down the kind of circular economy route of creating a concept that we call pay as you feel. So I came back to the UK. I set up a cafe. The second response I had was from a lady who had a cafe and she wasn't using it. It was like a community centre kitchen. And she just said, why don't you come and use this kitchen for this project that you want to get started? So I did. And we operated a pay as you feel concept. So basically what I did is I went around supermarkets and wholesalers and farms and markets and said, look, if you're throwing it away, give it to me. I will cook it and I will feed it to people and they can pay whatever they want. And that meant money, time, or skills in exchange for food. And anybody could come in, anybody could eat with us, and you didn't have to be poor or in need or vulnerable. You could literally just come in and help us stop this food from going to waste. And after around 3 months of doing this, The Guardian came and did a video on us. And that video went out just at the end of March 2014. And I think we had about 100,000 people in something like 48 hours contacting us from all over the world. This video went completely viral. And I had people from like Argentina sending me videos of their family hungry, asking me to come and feed them. And we were like, how are we going to be in Argentina and Leeds at the same time? Like, this is bonkers. And I remember we'd all closed the cafe that day and there was like 7 of us behind a laptop replying to all these people and saying thank you for all the kind words. And loads of people were asking us across the world, can they start a similar concept? Can they start a similar cafe? And we were like, yeah, just go do it. It's more about the principle rather than who actually owns the idea or the concept behind it. So they did, and people then started creating cafes and calling themselves the Real Junk Food Project. And there was Real Junk Food Project Brighton, Southampton, and we had several in London. And then there was Birmingham, Sheffield, and Leeds, and Manchester. And then it was just growing and growing. And by the end of 2016, we had 126 concept cafes in 7 countries worldwide. I was coordinating cafes in South Korea, Israel, Japan, France, Germany, and around 90 different concept projects and cafes across the UK. At one point, we had up to 30 just in the city of Leeds operating within a week. And we were still in this tiny little cafe in a small area in Leeds called Armley, a very, very rough area, very, very challenging area. And we all of a sudden, everybody started coming and giving us food, everybody. It was a tiny, tiny little town street. And there were huge lorries turning up with pallets, and we had to literally stand on these lorries and handball all this food off. We had no infrastructure and no logistics at all to manage all this food, but everybody was hearing about what we were doing and everybody was wanting to donate their food to us. And I remember one point we got this huge donation of milkshakes, around 9 tons, which is roughly around 18 pallets. If you imagine a pallet roughly about 5 foot high, there's about 8-9 tons, I think it was in total. And we didn't know what to do. These milkshakes just arrived on these pallets and they were blocking the streets and traffic couldn't get past and the police had to come. And we just went online and told people, look, come and get this food. And they did. And people were rocking up with their wheelie bins and filling it up. And there were homeless guys, I remember, turning up and then taking some and trying to sell it on the corner for like 50p a bottle. And it was bonkers. And then we realized that we need to get somewhere bigger than this cafe. We can't keep doing this. We're blocking the streets and we're causing issues and we simply can't deal with it on the corner of a street. So we went and got a warehouse just down the road from where the cafe was. And I filled it up within a week. It was very, very easy. And we didn't know what to do with it. And so we went on Facebook. I've got a very large following on Facebook. And I just said to people, look, come and taste food, please. And they did. And I accidentally created one of the world's first social supermarkets that operates a pay-as-you-go concept. Thousands of people turned up from all over the country in their vehicles and just literally filled them up and took them away. And the next day we did it all again. It was bonkers. And up to the point of where COVID happened, April 2020, I think we had around 10 social supermarkets across the UK, all the way from Brighton, Birmingham, and there was several in Birmingham actually, and Leeds, and all the way up to Edinburgh and Glasgow. And then his teacher got in touch with me, a primary school teacher, and said, look, have you ever thought about getting this food into schools? And I said, of course I thought about it, but I didn't know how I could do it. And we set up this idea of feeding as many children as possible across many schools as possible with just breakfast food suitable for breakfast, and delivered it to around 10,000 children in lots of schools across lots of cities. And we then created a project called Fuel for School, which is every week we delivered this food into schools, and we allowed the children to kind of do whatever they wanted with it. So some did market stalls where the children would run the market stalls and they would teach people about best before and packaging and climate change and environmental issues around the food. But it was completely inclusive. And we did that for around 4 years and fed thousands of children in schools across most of West Yorkshire and the north of England. It's a very, very positive and exciting and empowering kind of project that we did. And then obviously, as you're all aware, April 2020, COVID happened. And in the previous year, 2019, we'd intercepted, we call it interception. So interception is the point of where somebody would be throwing it away, and we stop them from doing it. So we don't receive donations of food like food banks do, where they need the food to feed people in need. We stop food from going to waste, and then we use that food to do lots of different things with it. And it's very, very inclusive in terms of what we do in terms of our operations and circular economy, asking people for things in return, not necessarily money. And yeah, COVID happened, and within the first 4 weeks of April 2020, we intercepted 1,000 tons of food. And that was the equivalent of what we'd done in the entire year of 2019. Now, we had this tiny little warehouse, it's about 1,000 square foot, and we had no infrastructure whatsoever, and there was just lorries turning up. And obviously it was locked down and people couldn't come out of the houses. And we created this model where we told people, look, just turn up, give us a donation, and we'll just fill your car up with food, and we'll just throw it in your boot and you can just drive off. And I remember one day we shut nearly half of the city of Wakefield down because of COVID, because we just blocked it with cars for hours and hours and hours because people were trying to get food from us. So we opened up a bigger warehouse, 15,000 square foot, 15 times bigger than the one that we had. We created a farm on the side. We composted all of our food waste. We fed tens of thousands of people. We created a new concept called Builder Box, or Freegan boxes, we call them, where you can pay £10 or £5. You can get a full box or a half box from us, and it's made up of all the food that was going to waste, from fruit and vegetables, bakery, dry goods, sometimes chilled and frozen goods. And you get pretty much, up to a week's worth of shopping for an average family of four for the price of £10, and it just exploded. And at the end of last year, unfortunately, COVID affected us and it caught up with us, and the Real Jumper project ceased after around 8 years. And I met a CEO of a catering organisation in Oxford in the UK, a guy called Frank Bothwell, and he invited me to create a new social concept doing very, very similar things, with the aim of trying to make products out of surplus food, and also to get it into schools and actually feed children with it, rather than just providing it as a resource for them to run like a market stall in its raw format. So January 2022, so only like 6 months ago, we created Surplus to Purpose, which is a new social enterprise that we run. We have a warehouse in Leeds. People can turn up every single day. They pay £10 or £5, or they can pay for as many boxes as they like, and they can build a box where they go around like a social supermarket, fill up a crate, and they can take as much food as they can physically carry. And the aim of this project is that we are going to do 3 things. So Build a Box is the main operation. We also do outside events. So we do weddings and outside catering. I've done 6 weddings already this year. So if you go on our social media pages, Surplus to Purpose, or mine, Mr. Junk Food Chef, on my website or my social media pages, you'll find all the pictures of all the weddings that we've done. Fed hundreds and hundreds of people. Some of the guests don't even know that they're eating surplus food until I do a speech at the end and inform them. So that's a really big operation of ours and a really successful one. It's a really good in terms of getting our message out there to people and demographics that might not necessarily know about food waste or its relationship to climate change. And the third one is hopefully going to start in September in 2022, where we've become the first social enterprise in the UK to supply schools, a state school, a primary school, with surplus food that will actually go into their catering department. So children will be fed nutritionally dense foods made from surplus. So it's obviously helping save the planet, but it's also improving their diets as well. But then we're going to educate and empower them around the issues of climate change and surplus food, whilst providing them with all this, incredible, amazing produce at the same time. And we hope that that'll obviously go national very, very quickly, because there's that much food going to waste that we can easily do this, which is also the problem. To give you kind of some context and some stats around food waste globally, we produce around 6,000 calories per person per day on this planet. And obviously we cannot physically consume that amount of food. A huge majority of that food gets fed to animals. A lot of those animals, all those animals, are slaughtered all over the world, placed into plastics, and obviously that's Dianna's topic, shipped all over the world. They stamp a date on it. We don't consume it, we don't purchase it, and then we dispose of it. Now, there's a couple of ways that we dispose of it now. It either goes to anaerobic digestion, which is where they make energy and fertilizer out of it, landfill, or just general waste. And a lot of the ways that we can offset the emissions coming from food waste is trees. And unfortunately, we're knocking down more and more trees to create more and more land, to create more and more food, to feed more and more animals. It's just this vicious circle. And in the UK, it's around 15 million tonnes, the official stats. That is actually waste in the UK. I believe it's a lot more than that. I believe there's a lot of food waste that is generated in the UK that isn't accounted for. So hospitality, a lot of production waste isn't accounted for. And there's actually no legal requirements to actually measure how much you waste in the UK. So a lot of the data comes from sporadic information that is fed to organisations that manage it from very, very few sources. So I believe that it's actually a lot worse in the UK right now. And the aim of Surplus to Purpose, to kind of finish off my speech, is that we want to live in a world where we don't exist. So we're seen as this very radical organisation. So the point is can we go 10, 15 years, if that, where the next generation can be empowered and educated around these issues, and hopefully they can come up with the ideas and the solutions to effectively put me and the project out of business. We don't want to be sustainable, which is kind of ironic from a business perspective, because even though that we need finances to cover our costs and our wages and our fuel, etc., the whole point is that we want to live in a world where people don't need surplus organisations, food banks, in order to be able to get access to food. And that waste isn't dealt with by donating it to the third sector as a way of basically passing on their responsibilities. And that we look at prevention, as obviously Dianna has mentioned, and we look at the reasons as why we overproduce too much food and why waste management is really, really poor, not just in the UK, but also across the world. So that's the aim. So hopefully, from some of the questions that we get today, we can hopefully get people come up with some ideas as to how they can effectively put me out of business. Thank you, everybody.
Adam, I don't think anybody's too sure that they want you going out of business right now, particularly not with the kind of problems that we've got all around us. But really, what an inspiring story of entrepreneurship and creative innovation. I have to say, as an economics teacher by background, I'm loving also that we've got somebody called Adam Smith noting the inefficiencies and the waste of the market on that farm in Australia and finding solutions as well. So good for you. I think as well, I just wanted to flag up as well the way in which you've been addressing poverty and wastefulness, and in doing so really, and in the process of that, really building bridges and bringing communities together, which again I think is just so inspiring. And I love the little nuggets that you dropped in there about some of the collaborations that you've done, whether, well, I suppose, right back to that farmer in Australia, but also with the primary teacher and with the other people that you've been working with over so many different countries. Really fantastic. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions. But for now, let me move on. Let me thank you, Adam, and I'll move straight on to our third speaker, Vanessa Nsona. Vanessa is a Malawian fashion designer and the executive director of Dorovi, a fashion social enterprise that works with women and youth in marginalized communities. Warm welcome to you, Vanessa, and straight over to you. Oh, we can't hear you, Vanessa.
Not yet. No. There we go. Still no.
I wonder if, do we just give that a second more? Try again, Vanessa? Nope.
Vanessa, did you unplug your headset? Yeah.
Okay.
You're not
There
on
we
the
go.
page, so.
Oh, is that working? No, still no.
Well, I'm just wondering if maybe we give Vanessa a moment to, I don't know, maybe to come out and come back in again. And maybe while we do that, take a question or two.
Hello.
Oh, I think we have you, Vanessa.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Can
perfect.
you hear me?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you for the introduction, Martin. Sorry about the technical difficulties. As Martin said, I come from Malawi, which is in Africa, and it's actually in the southern part of Africa. It's actually called the warm heart of Africa. So I'm just going to share a little story of how I actually started up. I've always been passionate about fashion, about design and crafts. I'm basically a creative, you know. Aside from being a designer, I'm just always been a creative person. So yeah, even though I majored in business management in school, in fact, I actually started up when I was in university. You know, it was a little after my mom had actually passed away. I grew up literally, I was her shadow, you know, like everywhere she went, I was there, you know. I learned so much from her, and she was so passionate about the community and did quite a lot to help the community. So she was really an achiever, and I was always there watching and learning, you know. And when she passed away, it really, really affected me. I was obviously very devastated, and it felt like it was the end of the world. But after some time, I gathered my thoughts and really started to think about, you know, what she would have wanted for me. And it started to spark something deep inside of me, you know, and I knew that I wanted just to fulfill and live out like a purpose, you know. I wanted to do something more, you know, than just being, you know. So I knew that I wanted to work with the community, and I knew I wanted to be in the creative industry, you know, to do with fashion, to do with designing, you know. And that's when it actually all started. That's when I actually came up with Dora V, you know. So Dora V is really, in essence, I think I should share the slides. I did have that ready as well for us. So let me just go right on. Right. So as I was saying, Dora V is a social enterprise that is creating sustainable designs. That's fashion and interior accessories through our makerspace that actually works with women and youth living in marginalized communities. And so these are like rural parts of my country and my city. That's where we target the women, and we basically collect and manage waste, and then we transform it by making fashion accessories and interior accessories. And some of the designs actually, or the products include handbags, sandals, fascinators, tables, shelves, mirrors, all made out of a variety of different wastes, which include car tires. We also use waste wood. We use old bags or jeans. You see from the different product ranges, we have the shoes and we have the mirror frames, and also use metal as well, discarded metal, and we recreate different pieces from that. As I actually started up, I started whilst I was in school, so it was quite many years ago anyways, when I was in school, as I said, and it's not like I had all the money to buy the resources that I needed in order to get started up, obviously, I was still in school. So, but I didn't let that stop me. I had to continue thinking about how that's going to work out. And especially being in Malawi, a third world country, most supplies and things actually imported. I actually imported, so I didn't have anything basically, but I was like, I'm not going to let that stop me, because I was really driven to do something. So I started to look around, and I started to look around available to me, and that got me thinking about the waste and the trash that was around, so that's when I actually started to explore a waste, and I taught myself to make the several things, out of it, the shoes, the bags, everything, I would experiment, and make the products and start recycling them. That's when I then started testing the products to people. I'll now showcase to people, and then demand started to grow for the products, and furthermore, people would actually ask if I actually made other things as well, apart from the shoes and things. That's when I started to now think about adding more things to the product line, with the waste that we actually had. And then we started to grow our product line in itself. And then we started making different things using the wastes. So as demand grew, I obviously needed extra help. I couldn't do it all by myself. And as I earlier mentioned, I've always been passionate about the community. So I just needed a way to bring that all together. That's when I started now to train young women who were from my community, but the rural parts, yeah? So these were mainly women that are school dropouts. They've probably dropped out of school because either they lack school fees, and maybe they're young mothers and people that just really don't have access to do anything really, and that's how we actually started to impact the environment and the community itself. So far we have set up the makerspace that is actually training youths and women in my community, and we actually have different programs within that, like the From Trash to Cash campaign that focuses on creating and training the youth to make things out of waste, as well as the women. And then when we make these products, we're able now to sell them as an income generating activity for them, and then the different community cleanups, as you see in the picture, we involve different schools and community leaders, and we clean up the streets and also show ways of using, like the picture with the bottles. That's a bin that we actually created using some of the bottles that we collected, and this is something now that was being used in the school, and then now they're also now able to start recognizing the waste and able also to separate the different types of waste. So those are just some of the activities that we have going on at Doro V. I just want to dive into sustainable fashion in itself and just the principles of sustainable fashion and what we really need to focus on when it comes to sustainable fashion, it's really in the overall process of it all, the production process of it all. So that's really how it's made and how it's designed, So when you're looking at sustainable fashion, we're thinking about how it's made, and that means who is making it, Is it a factory, Then you need to know the factory's ethics, or, because we have so many different factories that are out there, but some factories could be maybe underpaying or abusing employees in some way with poor working conditions. So those are things that need to be taken into account when it comes to making, and or if another alternative in terms of making is working directly with the community as an organization, like how we do it at Dorovi, which is engaging the community themselves, through the community cleanups and just being a part of it, and also the women that we're working with are also part of the community, and they actually do feel a part of the community. But what's important when it comes to that as well is ensuring that their interests are also protected in a way that they're also not taken advantage of simply because they are from a marginalized community. Then it means we have to make sure that they are also to feel a part of it, be a part of it, and they also have to get the right pay as well, because you may work with the community, but some other organizations end up abusing the people they're working with in the community. So it's always important to engage everyone and know the people that you're working with, and make decisions also together, and because there are always so many things that can come in the way of that. So that's when it comes to how it's made. So the other part is on the materials themselves that you're using to make. It's important to consider the suppliers that we're taking or for the production process, So it's important to also understand the production process that the suppliers are actually using, You just don't want to take any other supplier just because they're sourcing the materials, but you also want to understand how they do their business, how their production line is. Are they polluting the earth, So basically it's more on the ethical side. Or as we do it, we collect our own materials, and we make sure that to really design for the future. Is the product a fast fade, a fast fashion, we often buy clothing items, and when you're tired of it, you throw it away, it's here one moment and it's gone, so it's important to design products that will actually be timeless. It could be a product made from a recycled object, in fact, maybe we could dive right into circular design, because that's actually what I really wanted to talk about a little more in the design aspects. But when it comes to the key principles of sustainable fashion, it's really focusing on how it's actually made. The people have to actually be involved, the materials and how it's actually designed. You need to make sure that it's a timeless piece that can be used over and over again. And so I'm just going to just talk a little bit more about circular design, and really get us all thinking about how we can actually be circular, and also how we are circular at Dorovi. So circular design is really thinking about design in a circular form, you rethink a design of the product, but it's not limited to products. It's even about the way of life. But I'll just focus on the product at the moment, and the fashion itself. So you rethink the design of the product, its life cycle, most products have an end, as we've heard from Dianna, we've heard from Adam, but with circular design, you keep the product going, like designing for multi-use, so it goes beyond recycling. So it's like having, let's say you buy a shirt or you design a shirt that can actually change maybe into a skirt, or maybe you're designing a shirt that can be a piece that can be transferred or given to your child or your kids, a legacy piece, so that it keeps on going and doesn't die down, So even in terms of providing a service in itself, we basically just want to extend the product's lifespan, So let's say if I make clothes, and you buy the piece of clothing from me and that item gets damaged or it gets torn, oftentimes we throw it away. So I'd be providing a service. So if you buy clothes from me and they get damaged, then you bring it back and then we can fix it, or we can repair it, we can alternate it, so that we keep that that clothing item going, so that it doesn't end, so that clothes are not thrown and we don't have a lot of waste going on. So it's just important to design it in a way that is continuous, basically, or even using organic materials, so that, as Dianna also talked about, like finding alternative ways of using plastics, or other than plastics, so materials that can be organic, so that when they're thrown, it can go back to the earth's surface, like maybe instead of plastic, what about maybe a potato, a banana leaf, instead of the plastics, just finding ways that at the end of the day, we see these products going back to its natural habitats. So actually, one of our products is the Maravi sandal that I've actually just gone onto the slide. And this sandal is it's a multi-strap sandal that is made from organic cotton, local organic cotton. And the leather that we use from there is actually vegan, or it's actually from old handbags that we used to repurpose. And then the sole for the shoe is actually made out of car tires. So basically the design aspect of it now is that we have designed it in such a way that you're able, when you buy the shoe, you're able to tie the shoe in several different designs or several different ways. So you don't have to wear that shoe only in one way or one style, but you can change it up the way you want to because of the straps that we have put there. And on top of that, if you're tired of the fabric of the shoe, like over time, we bring back the shoe and we're able to change that fabric, and then we use the same sole, we use the same other pieces, we just change the fabric, and then you're able to take the new pair back, and then we're able now to also recycle the same cloth into other products that we actually use. So all in all, really, circular design is really a model of designing out of waste, really, and keeping products and materials in use and regenerating natural systems, which is everything that I talked about regarding our brand and how we do things. So I guess in closing, what I would want to just echo is that we live in a world that is ever consuming, so it's up to us to make deliberate efforts to live a different life, because that's going to shape the future, if we start to change things now, so everyone has a purpose in life. And I believe that each and every one of us, if we're to all put our efforts into clearing plastics, into clearing pollution, into clearing waste, into getting into a lifestyle of circular design, it's something that will shape the future in a better way, because we're consuming so much in the world right now. And I believe it's critical for each and every one of us to play a role and to make sure that we are doing something, you know. Even when it comes to circular design in terms of our own lifestyle, I mean, we are the same people who keep buying, let's say, bottled water, you know, from plastics, you know, and it's high time that we actually start going back to how things were at a certain time, you know, where there used to be glass bottles, you know, instead of, you know, the plastic bottles, you know, and then you'd actually exchange the glass bottles, you know, when you're going back to the shop, you know. Those are just some of the things that I feel as human, we need to really start thinking about, and also finding ways that we can live a life that will not just consume and consume and consume, but we need to ensure that we are actually, you know, reviving things and getting things and, you know, consuming in a way that will not hurt the earth. So with that being said, I think this is where I will stop. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Vanessa. You've shared with us there such a model of ethical production and circular design. And thanks so much for sharing those such stunning designs, actually, and products. They look really, really beautiful. I was really impressed there by the practical resourcefulness of sustainable fashion in the way that you described it and contrasted with and perhaps as an antidote to fast fashion. So thank you very much indeed for doing that. I think we're fairly pushed for time now, so I'm going to jump straight to questions. I know there's been quite a large number cropping up, and I think the first one that I'm going to pull up here for the panel, and I'll pick somebody in a moment, but why is creative, innovative thinking essential to developing new ways to consume natural and man-made resources more responsibly? It's Dianna, it's been a little while since we've heard from you. Why don't you kick off?
You know, it's important. Well, I feel like I already spoke about it in my talk, but I think it's really important. And I'll give a cool example really quickly. I've learned about this company. I think they've been going for a few years now in India. And this man inherited a juice shop, fresh juices from his family. And he decided to innovate that because he was upset about how many plastic cups and things they were using to serve beverages to people. So he came up with this idea to scoop out all the fruit and use the coconuts and use the cucumbers and use the mango, use whatever fruit he was using for the juice that had a sturdy enough outer skin on it, provided by nature, you know, scoop it out and then fill it with the fresh juice. And so people would drink it from that. It's really colorful. It's really beautiful. And then if it ended up on the ground in some way and the sacred cows coming down the street were eating it or whatever happened, it would, you know, actually decompose or become part of the compost. So I love that. I think it's you know, I'm not going to call it a simple idea because he had to set things in motion to create that, but it's a creative idea working with what we already have. And I just also want to do like a major shout out to both Vanessa and Adam. I'm so blown away by both of your work, and it's just making me full of ideas. I wish we had hours actually to have conversations about all of it, but I really appreciate something that I think we all have in common, which is not looking at things as waste, looking at everything as a valuable material that has value, that we just need to develop the design, the creativity, and the infrastructure around it to support utilizing it.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Adam, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, I think from my kind of sector that I'm involved in, you know, design and innovation has helped helped in terms of preventing food waste and also redistributing food waste. So apps and technology, you know, some of you may have heard of the Too Good To Go app, which is an incredible one that redistributes waste from kind of hospitality and retail end. And, you know, for me, that's kind of innovation that's come about because of the problem, which has now become one of the largest downloaded apps in the whole world and is now in most major countries. And what it's done, it's now educated and empowered people to be given a choice. And I think that's what, you know, everybody who's spoken tonight, you know, I think it's more about the choice and kind of understanding about the impacts of climate change when it comes to overproduction and waste management. We didn't really have a choice. Everybody was single focused on consumption and capitalism and overproduction, etc. And when we started realizing the true impact of that, then everybody turned around and like, well, what are we supposed to do? Because there's nothing else for us to choose to do. And I think now through design and innovation and creativity, I think now people are actually making a conscious decision as to, do I continue to be part of the problem, or do I become part of the solution? And because now people are able to make those choices, there's more and more kind of education coming about and more ideas coming up from people trying to help us solve these problems. So for me, yeah, it's only a good thing.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that. Vanessa, I actually want to move you on to a different question, if I may. Question popped up. What advice would you provide to school students who want to make a positive impact on the environment, but feel that they're too young to make a difference?
I think, like I said, I also started when I was in school, you know. You're never too young. That's the first thing. So remove that. You're not too young. But you just start from where you are at school. You know, what are you doing at school? You know, is there a way that you can become more sustainable? You know what I mean? Is there a way that you can do much more than what's already being done at the school? You know, I believe this is a general question in terms of, it's not specific to fashion, but it's probably general, like what can you do right now? But you start looking around where you are, you know, you start seeing the problems there, you know, that's where you need to start in order to get somewhere. You know, so I would say start from where you are, see what you can do at school, start volunteering, you know, like you don't have to wait for someone to say, oh, okay, let's start this. You should be the one to start, you know, get people around, bring people together, you know, talk to the teachers or talk to someone around there that can actually help to bring ideas, you know, and you'd actually be surprised. There are probably going to be other people who are also interested in probably the same project as you, and that would just even help you to even get it even much further, you know. So there's always someone there that will also be interested in what you want to do. So just start talking about it and get out there and just plan and do something. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. And I don't know if our audience are able to see, but we've got people chipping in with different ideas and different resources here. So hopefully those will get communicated onto the chat so everybody can see those again. But now I've got a quick question for Adam. If I can just pull it up for a second here. Adam, what are the top 3 things that people can do to reduce their food waste?
So I get asked this question a lot. You know, I've done speeches across the world, I've done TED Talks, etc. And this is the most asked question, and it frustrates me because I feel like a lot of the responsibility is passed on to consumers and individuals and households, especially in the UK. You know, when we talk about 15 million tons of food is wasted in the UK every year, and a large percentage of that, around 7 million tons, comes from households. I always feel like the responsibility is passed on to us and it's our fault. Obviously, there's lots of things that we can do. Grow your own food. You can obviously shop more locally, you know, organic, etc., etc. But the reality of the situation is a lot of those people can't make those kind of choices and decisions. And, you know, we live in a very, very fast-paced world. And, you know, convenience food plays a massive part of our lifestyles. And I think a lot of the responsibility should go back to the producers and the manufacturers and the retail industry, because collectively they're wasting vast amounts of food that never gets measured or mentioned. And for me, we shouldn't be looking at redistribution of food. A lot of retail industry managed to get away with paying an increase in landfill tax because of the austerity measures that came in place. And all of a sudden, there was a bigger rise in food banks, which needed access to more food. And all of a sudden, they were able to redistribute this food to people in need. And then they were looking good for doing it. And my argument was actually, we shouldn't have food banks and we shouldn't have waste. And why are we just clapping these guys for actually redistributing it? Why shouldn't we focus on the fact that they should be preventing it? And, you know, if you look at the types of food that are in supermarkets as well, so I never asked for avocados 365 days a year. I'm sure there's lots of people that are on this that never ask for strawberries in wintertime. Like, we don't have local food economies whatsoever, where we're only able to get food that is sustainably grown locally and seasonally as well. So, you know, this whole kind of movement and shift of having 365 days a year, 24-hour kind of access to food is actually creating more and more waste. So when people ask me that question of like, what can we do more of? I think we need to stand up and have a collective voice and put the emphasis back onto the industry and saying, stop blaming us and start acting more responsibly. From a production point of view, stop producing more than we can consume, stop shipping food all over the world that we're never going to consume, stop creating products that we're never going to consume, stop filling shelves up with supermarkets when you know full well you don't even sell this type of food, just so the shelves are full to make it look like there's plentiful. Stop giving us buy one, get one free offers, stop advertising junk food, stop putting sugar on next to checkouts, etc., you know, so that it's manipulating people into buying this stuff and wasting it. So yeah, I feel I strongly am passionate about the fact that it shouldn't be about us making decisions. It should be the fact that the industry has a massive role to play in being much more responsible towards the way that we consume food.
Thanks for that, Adam. I think that's a point really well made. I mean, it's not always the easiest point to make in a school when, you know, people want to feel that there's something that they can do, and you know, in a way you want to really encourage that, of course. But I mean, maybe if I can just sort of pull a strand from that, maybe what we ought to be sort of thinking about a lot more is that sense of putting pressure on you know, on the big players in this way. And I think that's a really important point. Thanks for that. I want to leave a last word actually from Dianna, and I just want to give you the opportunity to perhaps just give us one more final message, perhaps even just to tell us a little bit about whatever your next big project is, and what's getting you excited at the moment.
Sure. So I'm really excited about a number of projects, including this Flip the Script on plastics in film and TV. We've been working with a lot of our coalition members and notable coalition members now we're 13 years old. We're in our 13th year on how they get phase single-use plastics out of music festivals, events, production. But what I like about this new project is we're really looking at how do we tell real stories about all of these issues and get it into the narrative and the storyline of film and television and animation. So that's the project I'm the most excited about right now. And I can put a link to it if people are interested. It's on our site. I think it's rotating on the top of the website if you would like to learn more about it. You know, I would just say our coalition has grown in the way it has because we have welcomed people to it. And I would like to, again, invite everyone, including my fellow speakers, Vanessa and Adam, if it feels right to you, please join our coalition. We do a vetting process, but you just apply. It only takes about 5 minutes. And it currently doesn't cost anything to join our coalition, which I think is always shocking to businesses. It may not remain that way forever, but you know, there are so many great things that we can all do that will move us in the right direction. And one of those is to support policy and legislation. We've created some terrific tools. One of them is called the Understanding Packaging Scorecard, the upscorecard.org. Another is, at least in the United States, supporting the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It's federal legislation, but we're also now have been given the green light with the UN to begin developing a plastic treaty, so an international protocol around plastic, and that is very exciting. And I think that we can all do our part. I know that people were asking me, yes, does this have a relationship to what the cigarette industry did? It absolutely does. You know, the lobbyists from the cigarette industry, tobacco just moved right over and they're working for the plastic industry. And plastic is slated now by the year 2060 to like quadruple in production. And so we are really going in the wrong direction. Again, we need to reevaluate how we look at materials and look at them as valuable materials, not as single use or throwaway materials. So That's what I would leave you guys with. And I look forward to following everyone's work and seeing what happens with all of you students out there. Whatever you make happen, get in touch with us and let us all know, because it's going to take literally everybody to create this change. Thank you.
No, thank you. And Vanessa, Adam, Dianna, thank you all so much for this fascinating discussion and for sharing your intriguing insights into your work. As I've been listening to our speakers, all of you, I've really been struck by the ways that you've shown that creativity doesn't simply provide enjoyment and engagement and beauty, but it's also really the route to solving problems. As an educator working in a school that's passionate about exploring new ideas and acting responsibly in a global sense as well as a local one, I think a lot about how we can best prepare our students to make their own contributions to sustainability and other big challenges. And I'm struck by the way in which the work and impact of our speakers tonight springs from, well, from deep knowledge and understanding that you all have about your context, about science, about art, about economics, and so much else as well. And I'm also struck by the way in which you've all worked so productively with others. You know, I think I can say that none of your efforts there have been solo efforts. And I'm reflecting on the ways in which we actively prepare our students to work well with others and use those diverse interactions that they have to create solutions that are better than they could have come up with individually. Schools have traditionally had quite a strong individualistic focus in learning. And I'm always excited when I see students' collaborative work being encouraged and credited as part of their learning. I'm delighted that ACS International Schools have the goal of being carbon neutral. We've worked with a specialist agency, Sustainable Advantage, for a number of years now to audit our environmental impact. And we'll be issuing our own transparent sustainability report on that impact with reference to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, especially those on climate action, responsible consumption, and good health and well-being. We're reaching the end of our session this evening. I just want to say once more a huge thank you to our speakers, to Vanessa, to Adam, to Dianna, and to all of you for participating, for such great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get through them all. It's been such a fascinating, positive, and optimistic discussion, and I hope that it's given each of us some new perspectives, an understanding, and some thoughts that lead to actions. So thank you all once more for supporting our school, for supporting these efforts, and of course for supporting our students in their learning as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.